Well, this book has been written in French, which is my language. I'm raised in France. I made my studies in French. So the book has been translated into Italian, English. It has been translated into Spanish and also in Turkish, believe it or not. Translated into Turkish by Avesta Books. Avesta is a Kurdish publishing house. That's 7 years ago. So I think that it took Armenians 15 years to realize that this book concerns them. Yeah, I'm very glad, of course, that at long last it has been translated into Armenian, because what do we have? If we look to international books on the Armenian genocide, what do we have? We have, up to a certain point, Franz Werfel, the great Austrian writer, the German Hilsenreit, who was received here by the President of the Republic. And then we have a few Armenians, like Oshagan, and translated very late, 50 years later, in French only. We have a few other books like Gostan Zaryan, short translation, partial in English, not very well known, though it is a masterpiece. Then we have Menatsortner, partially translated. So we're very weak. If we compare with the Jews, we are just extremely minor. And what we have had was a sort of preview of what happened during World War II. So yes, of course, I'm very, very happy that it's now in Armenian and that Armenians are going to read it, hopefully. It would have been up to the Armenians to realize that this concerns themselves, and that in addition, like the book of Peter Balakian, it was a book which was a breakthrough of a question which was 20 years ago very, very little known. After all, it took a good 50 years to wake up from the trauma. There was nothing until 65, and there was nothing until 75 with the beginning of the assassination of some of the Turkish diplomats of a country which was denying completely what had happened historically. And then we have 84, 83, the famous tribunal in Paris with 3 Nobel Prizes, among them the creator of Amnesty International, Sean McBride. They were all received by the President of the Republic of France. France was one of the first countries to recognize the genocide of the Armenians. That's very important. And the last one to recognize it 2 years ago was Germany. We have had very good intellectuals among the Armenians. We are supposed to be a country and a people who has reading books forever. We have a long-standing literature. I would say that one of the things is that the negation of the fact of the extermination, which is now called genocide, has mobilized a lot of Armenians, researchers, intellectuals, trying to let the things know, explain, write books about what happened, etc. So this has left very little space for literary creation. That's the big difference. Besides, I think that Armenians read less than the Jews. When I was a kid, my father told me the story of his own brother. He was a lawyer. He was the Kaimakam of Hajan, a city at 1,200 meters high. That was during the French Mandate. He received weapons, and he decided that he would resist against the Turkish troops. He led a siege of 7 months, successfully for the 7th month, and then of course he was overwhelmed by the difference of number, and he died weapons in hand. I think that it's a very nice way of dying when you have no other choice. That's very important. So for me, it's part of my, let's say, family memory. You fight, you die, but you die fighting. And when I was a kid, I mean, I used to go with my family to see some Armenian people, and the old women were always mourning about, well, we lost our family, my father, my brothers, they have been all massacred, etc. And I hated that. I hated that sort of victimology. I did prefer those who fought. So, very naturally, when I was 16, 18, I was interested in something which was very important in those days, movements of national liberation. So I joined the Algerians, I joined the Vietnamese, I went with the Palestinians, I went in Latin America, I went in Southeast Asia, the Far East, everywhere. I became, without knowing it, a specialist of asymmetric warfare, guerrilla warfare. I've been teaching that at Harvard, at Berkeley, UCLA, in France, at École Nationale d'Administration, which is our highest school, at the War School, etc. So yeah, the fact that I come from a family which belongs to a people who has been victim has pushed me to be for fighting and not accepting defeat. So for me, Karabakh, for instance, where I was in '93, was a great pleasure. For the first time, I saw that we could be a people which was not only a victim people, but a people of warriors and successful at that. This is a book of literature, above all. It's really literature, international literature. It's a mix of family reminiscence, and also it's a testimony for the Armenian people. I speak of what happened. I mean, during 1915, 1916, the massacres and everything, and it took me a long time to speak about those things because it was very painful. Let's see, painful. And at the same time, I wanted to make it really tragic, but not lalgan. I wanted it to be epic. It's a transformation of a tragedy into something epic. And that's good for the Armenians, because we've cried enough. If we look to the 20th century, we can say it's a century of ideology between capitalism and socialism and so on. Okay, but we can also look to the 20th century as the century of the end of empires. That's the death of Ottoman Empire, it's the death of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, it's the death of the colonial empires, and at the end, it's the end of the Soviet Empire. So, we are part of that. We are part of the death of the empires. We are part also of an era where, for the first time, minorities have some rights. That in 1948, at San Francisco, it has been proclaimed that people have the right to self-determinate. And self-determination for the people of Karabakh meant that they did not want to be ruled by Azerbaijanis who ruled them badly. They wanted to be out of the Azeri system. So this is exactly, I mean, the produce of the 20th century. We're part of that. We belong to the great change of the 20th century. Now we have a conflicting interpretation. On one hand, people don't like, in international relations, to change borders. Borders should not be changed, unless through violence. And on the other hand, you have the right to self-determination. So we have been caught in between. We did want self-determination, we fought for it, and now it is not recognized internationally. So we are caught in a situation which is frozen, and we depend, in fact, of Russia. We depend on Russia, just like Georgia has depended on Russia in 2008. We depend on Russia, just like Azeris depend on Russia. And we have seen it the last time during the 4 days war. Mr. Putin says, okay, come on. And he said, you stop. Well, we see the reality is that. That's real politics. Well, the future is determined, among other things, by demography. You see, 1 century ago, 33% of the people of the planet was in the north, from Northern America, US, Canada, to Russia, Tsarist Russia. That was 33%. Now that area is only 15%. So we have had a lot of people in Asia and now in Africa and up to a certain point in Latin America rising. So we are less important. For instance, in Armenia, one of the, I would say, probably the crucial problem is that we were 3 million, we are at most 2 million today. 1 million at least left for the rest of the world, Russia, North America, Australia, etc., etc. That's very important. I mean, the problem is that we don't want to become a museum of 1.5 million Armenians. I think that life is action. I think that life is courage, physical courage, intellectual courage, moral courage. That's very important. I don't think that security is the only thing in life. I think that you've got to take risks. I think that you have to fight for liberty. I think you have to fight for some justice. And I don't want to say one day, how could you sell your unique life for so little?